Alright, yeah, welcome back to some more Gwent. So, this week I'm going to be taking a look at a older deck that was considered the cancer of Gwent, I think, back when it was as powerful as it was. And then it got a bit of a nerf, so it's kind of down in the tier 2, tier 3 area now, which is where I prefer to be. So, we're going to be looking at Dagon Swarm right now. So, Dagon Swarm is essentially a swarm deck, and that means that we are trying to get as many units on the board as humanly possible. I should mention the reason why this deck was so powerful last patch was because of harpies, and they've since been nerfed. So yep, harpies are a 3-power agile unit, and whenever a beast ally is destroyed during your turn, you may copy this unit from your deck. So every time a beast gets consumed, in our particular case, we pull the harpy. But before that, it was about when the beasts turned up on the field. So we had beasts, and then the eggs spawned beasts, and the woodland spirit spawned beasts. So it used to be a 3 of, now it's a 1 of, because we can still pull one harpy consistently, and it's nice to do that because it does count as 2 units on an Ekimara, for example. But we can't really support 3 anymore because we don't consume enough beasts, and not enough beasts die during our turn, that kind of thing. So we're just running 1 now. The reason why this deck works though is because of this card right here, Yennefer the Conjurer, 6-power agile loyal unit. When you deploy her, you spawn either a unicorn or a Chironex. We are 99.9% of the time going to be spawning a unicorn. So it's a 1 strength beast who is doomed, and when you deploy him, then you boost all other units by 2. And this is a synchronous effect, so it boosts units on your opponent's side by 2 as well. So the idea is that we tip the scales very much in our favour in order to make Yennefer a huge point swing. So, for example, if our opponent has 2 units and we have 4, that means we've got 2 extra units on top of them, which means that we get 4 extra points from the unicorn. So for every unit more that we have than our opponent, we get an extra 2 points on the Yennefer. In order to play Yennefer as well, our other golds, Royal Decree, allows us to pull her out of the deck as well, and if it is a unit, we can boost it by 2. Sometimes we want to pull the Renew in order to res her or something like that. And if we've got her in hand, then these 2 actually apply to Woodland Spirit anyway. And Woodland Spirit is also a really good swarming card. So 5 strength agile unit, and when it spawns on any row, when you deploy it on any row, you spawn 3 rabid wolves on the melee row and create a fog. So this unit alone stands for 4 units, but the fog that it creates as well allows us to pull a foglet out of the deck. And whenever you apply a fog hazard, you copy this unit from your deck on the opposite row. If there are none, then you resurrect it from your graveyard instead. So as long as we've got fog on the field, Foglet's going to do its job. If the fog does go away though, then the Foglet dies off. But we've got Dagon as well. Dagon, the reason why it's our leader in this particular case is because it can spawn fog, which means that our leader counts for 2 units, which Eredin is the only other one that can do that, and Eredin is very Wild Hunt focused and doesn't really synergize too well with the deck, which is why we're going with Dagon, because Dagon works quite well with fog and that kind of thing. And of course it is Dagon Swarm after all, so we're going to be going with that. So let's go on to some of our silvers. We'll work from the top, shall we? We've got Germain of Fox Hollow, one of the newest units in the deck, and the reason why this deck is still viable, to be honest. 8 strength agile unit. When you deploy him, you spawn 2 cows on the right and 2 cows on the left, which means this silver counts for 5 units. So you can imagine when our opponent's playing 1 unit per turn and we're playing 5 per turn, how easily it is to get ahead of them in terms of Yennefer power. We've also got Ifrit as well. Ifrit is... I'm going to back out for the lack of the noise. Ifrit is a 7 strength siege unit, and when you deploy him, you get 3 lesser fire elementals. So yet again, he counts for 4 bodies. And those fire elementals as well are 1 strength units, and when they appear on the board, they damage a random unit on the opposite side by 1. So they effectively count for 2 points each. Which means this is a 13-point card, which is pretty cool, as well as obviously adding more units to the board for the Yennefer to hit. We've then got Commander's Horn as well. Commander's Horn boosts 5 adjacent units by 4 because it's very easy for us to set up 5 adjacent units on a row. And of course, if our opponent is running maybe lacerates and things like that, it might be in our best interest to make sure that all of our 1 strength units are not 1 strength and in fact can survive a lacerate or something like that. Because lacerate is pretty much the big killer of this deck. If that card ever becomes incredibly popular, this deck won't stand a chance, essentially. Right now, though, most decks only run maybe 1 copy at best, so you don't really have to worry about it too much. On to the next, we've got Decoy as well. This is a very new addition, honestly. I used to have Iris in the deck as a clever little play, but she was a little bit too conditional. So the reason why I cut Iris, and the reason why I had her in the first place, is that in round 1, when you play out all of your carryover, so your harpies are spawning to harpy eggs or harpy hatchlings in the next round, your earth elementals are spawning to lesser earth elementals. We used to have about 5 or 6 units on the board, so when Iris dies at the end of round 1, and all of the Death Wishes spawn all of the units, Iris's Death Wish ability would spawn on round 2 as the result of carrying over, essentially. So we'd actually be able to match this Death Wish perfectly, and it would create a lot of points on our board for when we plan on either dry passing or playing out. But I decided I'd probably try to go for the 2-rounder most of all, and Iris is a little bit conditional as well, so a lot of things deal with her. So they can decoy it onto our board, they can coral it, they can lock it with God knows how many different lock effects. They can, well, boosting it really doesn't do too much, but that can maybe pull out a few hits there and there if they want to boost that instead of something they'd rather boost because they think we can kill it, that kind of idea. But I ended up cutting it for Decoy instead, because Decoy effectively counts as any one of our silvers. And even if we don't have either Ifrit or Jermaine on the board, we can also use it on Selena Harpy for 2 extra units. We could use it for Slyzard to consume more Selena Harpies or Earth Elementals, so there's plenty of options for us to use here. This Decoy counts for pretty much every single card in our deck. So long as it's on the board, we can use this. And we can heal up units as well if they're damaged and boost them by 3, which is pretty cool. You might wonder why we've got a Madrom in here. So Madrom is a flex slot, mostly because I've seen a lot of Consume recently. And Consume uses Neckers for the most part. So whenever a Necker enters the field, what you want to do is have the Madrom in your hand round 1. So when they play their Necker, you Spores it, which banishes it, taking it out of the graveyard and out of play altogether. Because quite a lot of the time there are Consume matchups where they'll just keep 1 Necker in their hand because they plan on Necker worrying it the following turn to put more Neckers in the deck. So often if you reset that unit and banish it off the board, you can pretty much just get a GG right then and there because they've usually set up their hand in a greedy way. But it's a nice little play. It's not always a game winner, but I found it kind of fun to play around with. And at the very worst, it's got a lot of targets as well. So the Impera Brigade and things like that. All of your high point cards, if you're running against Reveal, for example, you've got your Spotters. There's lots of options there, but yeah, resetting units and weakening them is pretty powerful right now, I would say. So having that option there, at the very minimum, is not too bad. We've also got Dora Garay. So Dora Garay is 2 units in 1, yet again plays into our plan. But he also spawns Ekimaras as well. The reason why this is carryover deck as well is because pretty much everything that we play in round 1 will be a carryover to the next round. So Dora Garay produces Ekimaras for the most part, is usually where we want to go. And we deploy it against Resilience and consumes an ally, so we get to consume maybe our Selena Harpies, which will pull our Harpy out of the deck, so we can then produce an extra unit in that sense. Well, we don't, but you get my point. But Savage Bears can be also quite useful if we're going up against a mirror or something of the sort. Taking out the 1-point units is quite useful. Although, then again, now that I think about it, it doesn't actually work that way. Scratch that. Wyverns damage enemies by 3 and can take down a Necker as well if we've got that in round 1 we can take out the second Necker and really hurt them. Drowners, we've got a lot of fog, so we can move units into the fog to keep that ticking and also damage them by 4 at the same time. So there's a lot of utility for Dora Grey, and we can decoy him as well to keep it going. So let's check out the bronze package. Actually, before we go, we've got a buyer. A buyer is our mage of the group, so 3 strength siege unit. He's in here for a few reasons. Torrential Rain, as we mentioned, against the 1 strength units in a mirror match with Selena Harpies, for example. Raining their Harpy eggs can be quite effective. Clearing the skies, though, is usually why this is here. It is just a weather clear for the most part, because weather can be a little bit bad for us. In the case of Eredin and Frost, we don't really want them frosting off all of our 1-point units and things like that, so clear skies is pretty good for that kind of thing. And it also boosts if they are damaged as well, so it's not actually the end of the world. Araka's Venom I find myself using quite a lot, though, because that's actually 12 points on a stick. And it hits 3 units, potentially killing 3 units and getting them off the board, which really helps in swaying the scales in our favour in terms of Yennefer. If we can take down 3 units with 1 unit, add into the board, then, you know, that's like effectively having 4 more units on top of our opponents. So let's have a look at our bronzes. We've kind of talked about the Foglet. When fog enters, it spawns. We can then consume it with our Ekimaras. Ekimaras are 6 strength agile units that gain resilience, so we carry them over into the next round. And you consume allies as well. So if we consume a Harpy, then another Harpy comes out. If we consume the Foglet, then that allows us to maybe play the Woodland Spirit after we've played Dagon's Fog and replay the Foglet. So we've got 2 attempts at playing the Foglet out here. We've then got Earth Elementals as well, 6-point melee units, that when they die, they spawn 2 lesser Earth Elementals for 2 points each, so they carry essentially 4 of their 6 points over into the next round. They also have a shield as well, which is pretty good as a deterrent for our opponent if they want to essentially... The Swordsmiths for Scoia'tael don't really have a target with these Earth Elementals, so playing them out against Scoia'tael is really useful as well. Selena Harpies spawn 3 units as you play them as well, so that's pretty good. And the Harpy eggs, when they die, spawn 2 into the next round, so really helping to make this deck what it is. And Slyzards, of course, consuming either our Selena Harpies, Earth Elementals, or Ekimaras to pull the others from our deck and thin out our deck and make sure that if we don't have our Yennefer or a way to grab her in hand, then we've thinned out our deck and up the odds of drawing her. Alright guys, I think that is effectively everything to do with this deck, so if you want to check out the matches, then there should be some already out. And a link to it will be at the end of this video. If you did enjoy the video, it helps out a great deal if you like and subscribe, and if you hit that little bell icon as well right next to the subscription button, that will give you notifications when the next videos go live. I do hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.